Links to support channel over on Subscribestar, Cash App, or Coffee. I don't know how much longer we'll be on Coffee because they use PayPal, and if you speak truth to power, if you get off the narrative, then PayPal will ban you, which means you get kicked off of Coffee. Such is the way of the world. Nothing is without risk, as many people are slowly kind of awakening to. So, getting to Balenciaga, and it's weird the things that the mainstream narrative will go to protect, and it's like, where's the outrage? The outrage is over that rapper guy. It's like, so what about the outrage over this design company? Oh, that seems to be kind of, if it wasn't for Shoe on Head and Brittany Ventney, it kind of would have got ignored. Oh, that's weird. Yeah, that's weird. Where's the disavowal for Balenciaga? It's the mainstream is a little slow in disavowing it. And the Young Turks went out there and they did a video, and they're like, oh, this is going to give the right wing ammunition. And even people in their own comment section are like, what are you talking about? Can't you just disavow something evil? And Slate magazine did an article on it, and they said something like, yes, this is bad, but it gives the right wing ammunition. You look at them like, are you guys on board with this? Because it really seems like the left wing, like, this is a left wing value, and you're saying like, oh, the far right is against hurting kids. Okay, well then you're just going to sign up every normal person for the far right. The far right supports free speech and protecting children. Okay, great. That's a great party to run on. So to explain, I need to give a little intro to how Hollywood parties work, the fast crowd, the left-hand path, and how you LARP your way into actual literal satanic worship. And then there's like your ordinary degenerates, and then people with negotiable morals. But then, I mean, yes, there are literally evil people, Epstein, Weinstein types in Hollywood, and a bunch of others too. But there's just a big crowd of people who don't have a core, so they're kind of rootless. They're cut off. They'll just kind of do and say whatever. They kind of get down this slippery slope because, like, they're not the crowd that's going to church on Sundays and having 4 kids or has some kind of tribal connection. They don't have any inner core, so they'll just kind of fall for anything. So start at the start. The end stage of the photo shoot doesn't arise out of thin air. You don't just cold call an ad agency and tell them you want to use kids with BDSM themes. The thing is, the ad agency, if they're in Hollywood, definitely has negotiable morals, but they might get nervous about the consequences and the fallout, and if they don't have a relationship with you, they might not be sure about it. But let's do a thought chain on how you get to this end result. Imagine a Hollywood party, and you hear that, and you think of like big names and glamorous women, and little black dresses, and chandeliers, and that kind of like Hollywood stereotype. No, that's the end stage of the Hollywood party. Imagine more like a 3 bedroom, 2 bath house somewhere outside of L.A. With a backyard barbecue, just like a real casual, down to earth people who are in the industry, but they're on like people who are on Saved by the Bell back in the 90s, the grade C shows. Like, they're in the industry, but they're not, like, you wouldn't recognize them. They're people or in front of the camera, behind the camera. It's like, yes, they are in Hollywood, but they're not, like, it's not a mansion. It's just a backyard barbecue. And so say you're in your 20s or something, you're in the best shape of your life, and you're involved in the creative field somehow, acting, photography, something similar. You're personable, and the background party isn't crazy. Maybe somebody's doing some stuff in a back bedroom, but it's mostly just normal people. It's a mix of normal people and fast people in the crowd. Fast people are the crowd that are not getting married and going to churches, but the more of these things you go to, you recognize the fast crowd and people who are like going to go down that path, and people who are going to spin off. And like, people do get involved in these parties, and they do spin off and go like, oh, you know what, I met a girl, we decided this lifestyle is not for us, we're not going to do drugs, we're going to get married and have kids, and they go off and they do that kind of stuff. It's like, you kind of dodged a bullet by staying involved with that, because I know a lot of people who stayed along that lifestyle, and they OD'd, or they self-deleted, or they were involved in it. It's like, that's why it's called the left-hand path for a reason. So then you get invited to another party because you're fun, you're cool with drugs, and you can party without being a junkie. Or say you're a photographer and you're kind of a fun, anything goes type of guy. You go to parties at people's houses, and the houses start getting nicer, and the girls who are serving drinks, and it's just going to kind of, like, as I thought this out, it kind of sounded like a penthouse forum. But it's important to explain how this works, because it deals with like breaking taboos, pheromones work, the chemical messengers. So you're going to these houses, these parties at nicer houses where they've got girls serving drinks, and they're wearing almost nothing. And there's a reason for that, for the chemical messengers, and also to break those taboos. You're young, the pheromones are in the air, sex and drugs are available. You're slowly getting involved in this fast lifestyle. You end up at parties where you're doing drugs and somebody next to you is finger banging the girl on the couch, and then some other guy is getting blown, while you're doing drugs, or people are having like a gangbang in the bedroom next door, but the door is open, or there's a BDSM scene. It just, my point is, it gets more and more intense, but it's still, it's consenting adults doing consensual stuff. It's not, there's lines you cross. It's like the stairway to heaven and the highway to hell. So you follow the theme here. It's a series of escalations. You're in Hollywood. You want to be accepted, and you're at these places, and you're getting connections to more jobs in the industry. So the test is like, when do you leave the party? It's a signal to them, like, where do you draw the line? And it's not like people are consciously taking notes. It's just a subconscious slow escalation of that philosophy of like that's kind of a good phrase of like, when do you leave the party? Where have you reached your limit? Like, I've seen enough, and it's time to tune out of this lifestyle and go like get involved in something else. So say you're a photographer, you're there, like that's how you're making connections. And in your mind, it's like, oh, it's all adults. It's like they're doing weird stuff, but it's all adults. And maybe you enjoy the kind of thing. The thing is, there are levels of degeneracy. You might be doing drugs, having sex, and it's public sex because the thing is to break down barriers, including the kinky BDSM stuff, because it's just slowly breaking down these barriers of the sacred sexual act, the holy trinity of man and woman and a little baby, into the profane kind of worship of the left-hand path. But it's all adults, and that's not a good thing, not on a personal level, but you're dealing with adults. It's not a Malum and say evil in and of itself act to others. It's evil to your spiritual ascension because it stops your spiritual growth. So say you're a photographer, you're in this fast lifestyle, you're friendly with people, you like the drugs, you're young, you don't really understand the consequences of that kind of. It's like, yeah, you don't see a whole lot of 40-year-olds doing the stuff you're doing now because they either OD'd or self-deleted, or you like the sex, and say you even like the kinky sex. You're not a bad person yet. You're just kind of a spiritually lost person. But the parties are your key to getting more paying gigs in the industry and making connections, and people know that you're just fun to be around. Now, do people actually worship Satan and bang kids? Well, yes. Yes, they do. Epstein's Island showed that. That's like the best thing that came out of Epstein's Island is that it pulled back the veil on a lot. Like, you couldn't say this is a right-wing conspiracy theory, and there are no shortage of right-wing conspiracy theories, but it's like the Epstein Island stuff, and then like he later got deleted in jail, and then his French partner Brunel also got deleted in a French jail when the cameras both turned off. It's like that there's more to that story. Like, that story is so huge, and you look at the mainstream media and go, oh, they're not covering the story because they're afraid. It's like, yeah, that's the brutal truth of it. It's like, if you talk to some reporter, you go, one, if they can get to Brunel and Epstein and literally delete them in prisons, that means that they're going through the prison guards, they're going through the warden, they're going through like the governor of the territory to get to these guys. It's like they're that powerful. Yeah, they'll be able to delete a reporter. Of course. And then the second part is the reporter goes, yeah, so my boss is on the flight logs, so we're not going to cover the story. Okay, so what happened? Story doesn't get covered. And like, there are some smaller people who try to cover these stories, and then they if they get big enough, then they just self-delete also. That also is the way of the world. Having having financial institutions deplatform you, getting kicked off of mainstream media, and then ultimately, if you get a big enough social footprint, you'll just get deleted in a robbery gone wrong or a drug deal gone wrong. It's like, but they didn't do any drugs. Like, they don't do drugs at all. Yeah, yep. They're still gone though, and that story is gonna have to be picked up by somebody else. Anyway, so, and as for the like, all this stuff is like, you don't do, like, nothing is done without risk. So as for the Satanism stuff, think of it this way: you're getting introduced to this faster and faster crowd. Turn back on. The serving girls are wearing almost nothing, like the thinnest of silk dresses. They're not wearing underwear because they want the smell and the pheromones of sex in the air. Visually, you're seeing a lot of flesh. The girls are like semi half available as long as you do your part, but it's like it's all working together of breaking down taboos of to put people onto this left hand path of kind of mindless hedonism. They do the things like what is it, the nude sushi thing where the girls, you're eating off a naked chick, and then they kind of will slowly escalate that. And it's like sex is just there. Sex is into drugs are in the air. It's a fast crowd. It's a fun crowd. It's kind of you'll just do. It's like whatever is pleasurable is what you'll do. But it's consenting adults. It's not like you haven't crossed the line yet. And then they might some like they're looking for deeper and deeper thrills, and there's a spectrum of people who are involved with this. And then they get into like the Maria Abramovic type of stuff. The art house shows where they're painting in blood and they're LARPing Luciferian kind of nonsense, or spirit cooking stuff, and it's LARPy, but it's like they're LARPing for long, live action role playing, for long enough that it starts getting weird. Now, say you get invited to like an Eyes Wide Shut type of party, which if you haven't seen that movie, you definitely time to download it. There's a by Stanley Kubrick, who I think after he passed away after he made that movie. Kubrick was a good guy. So was God. Who was that other guy who did? He was on YouTube for a while. YouTube took down all his videos. I forget the guy's name. Anyway, so there's you're at this party. There's like drugs, public kinky sex, BDSM, gangbangs, but there's also a ceremony of some sorts, and you assume it's just silly LARPing, and it's not a big deal. And like most people there, it's just a silly LARPing type of ceremony, a brief ceremony. It's just part of the fun. But you keep getting better and better gigs, and you're making connections, and it feels like everything is kind of loosely tied together. Kinky, weird sex, drugs, and these spiritual ceremonies that start to look more satanic as time goes by. And it's for most of everyone there, it's not serious, but it's just a piece. All these pieces slowly kind of work together. It lowers your inhibitions to make more things acceptable. And no, you're not banging guys if you're straight. They're not going to cross that boundary for you, and you're not going to get involved with kids. It's not like that because most guys have their limits. But you might be involved in some kind of group activity with the executive who's giving you jobs. It's like all this stuff lowers your inhibitions and breaks down barriers. So no, not all these people are into kids, but they have negotiable morals that have been worn away by years of drugs and degenerate sex. Now, is Satanism real? Not to most people, not even to most of the people who are actually involved in it. But imagine that you're taking part in these rituals and you keep getting better and better jobs and connections, and life seems to be going pretty well for you. At some point, you might wonder if these spiritual slash satanic they're just Earth Mother whatever rituals might have some power to actually open up a spiritual channel to the other world. Now, I personally don't believe in an anthropomorphic Satan, but it only matters is that people either do believe or act as if they believe, because if the results are the same anyway, it's like understanding the motive is only important to them. So imagine that you're in Hollywood for years and you're tied into this fast, edgy, artistic crowd, and like it's the same as San Francisco, L.A., New York. Like there's a lot of degeneracy in the art world because people, at least back in the day when the BLT stuff was more on the edge, it's like people who are involved with that were already, as you push taboos, you just push more. These people will push more and more taboos, and it's like you find it in this artistic. It kind of ties in the communist theory of the media is pushing this thing of reject your blood tribe, reject your blood family. So you don't have to be held as responsible to them and get involved in a found family. It's just a group of people who get together for degeneracy, and they're fighting the man. It's like, yeah, all that's Bolshevik propaganda. It's all the left hand path. Like the best thing you could possibly do in this situation would be return to your tribal roots, get your in-group preferences, get married, have kids, go to church. Even if you're not religious, like yes, still become a part of the community, go to church, and have as many kids as you possibly can. That's like the softer, boring life. That's the right hand path, and you only realize that as you get older and you get out of this situation. You look at like, oh, you can clearly see the left hand versus the right hand path. The thing is, all this stuff works together to lower your inhibitions of what is right and wrong, and things get a little slippery. and you're in this crowd who, like, they're not Christian, they don't have a strong dogma of any sort, they'll just sort of fall for anything. So when some beautiful girl who's an artist, she wants to set up a photo shoot, that's a little weird, but it's not sexual. What I mean is, like, some of the earlier pictures of these kids weren't, or the of this ad agency, they had kids. They weren't sexual, except that they were weird when you started to study them. There were pictures of kids alone in sort of a desolate room. It didn't look like a kid's room exactly, except when you think of kids, kids are supposed to be with their friends, their family. They're supposed to be part of a protective tribe, and these photos were them alone in a room. So in those images, the camera represents the adult eye, who is also alone in a room with a child, which seems weird for a fashion company. So keep in mind, there are only a few people who actually believe in Moloch or Lucifer, but as time goes by, the LARPing can kind of turn into something else. Anyway, I hope that was an acceptable definition explanation for YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, support channel on the platforms as you can. I'll see you guys on the next episode.